Who can participate? Set a delay between messages. Right. Okay, we are live. Good. So that's all started. We do, yes. We do. The restrooms are at the back, Ben.
Oh, so I thought if there was hot water.
Oh, yes, I normally have it on.
It's okay, that's too late. I'll have tea when I get home.
That's okay, well, it'll be ready soon. When we had our minion on Sunday morning, we had the tea and coffee, and I even bought some instant oatmeal, just in case anybody wanted to have, and here is the restrooms are back here, and then here, this is our little, my wife uses that to feed my son. Did you know we had a baby? Yeah, so before, and this is our kitchen and the women's.
That was soon after we left it.
It was July the 4th. July the 4th. So, yeah.
You should
And
have
this is,
not that pretty tender.
will you be here? And maybe your grandchildren can come. We have kids' activities. We have crafts. Okay. Okay, it's free. We have crafts.
Since Thursday night, we did the Hollywood 3 times. So
Oh.
where we're going to be.
Okay, okay.
But thank you.
And how are they settling in? This is their first year, right? They just moved?
Yeah, they moved in September.
Okay, so how are they coping with it? Okay.
Yeah, they have a lovely congregation at Young Israel.
Yes.
Right.
They have a lot of friends already.
Good,
Some who moved before, but others
Good.
they've become friendly with since.
good.
So thank God.
Okay.
Very nice place.
Okay. Still have a minute. I should warn people that I got a couple of nasty messages. One was from Comcast, who do our internet, saying they were doing upgrades. But then I just got a message saying they cancelled the upgrade. They're going to do it next week, so they could have outages. And the other message I got was that Shul Cloud, where a lot of people will be watching on our website, is going to have scheduled maintenance tonight at 8 till 8:30. So if those who are watching on our Shul website have a problem, you'll know why.
At the very least, you're recording it so people can watch.
We are recording it, but if you're sitting and watching on our website and all of a sudden it goes off, but because they messed around with the internet, I wasn't able to get our air conditioning on remotely. We like to think we have a modern shul over here. Everything is all internet lights and internet stuff that we can set to go off and on. But the problem is when the internet goes down. And you'll see also we had one problem with one of the circuits couldn't get an internet switch on it because it had a problem with the 3-way wiring. So I put a switch bot. Have you seen those? No. Where you can program it. We have it on appliances for Shabbos, and it comes and it presses the light. You'll see a little thick thing over there. So it presses the light off and on. Yes, and okay. So the WhatsApp message just went out, and okay, did I hear somebody trying to come in? Okay, so a few things to start with. So it was lovely having our first weekday minyan on Sunday without breakfast. So that was nice. And again, we'll do it in Mitzvah Hashem this Sunday. And if we can have more, somebody told me there are 3 guests coming this week that are here. So if we can have enough for a minyan, we can have a minyan. So we'll see. So that was nice. The other thing is, don't forget our Hanukkah extravaganza concert. That event that we're having, that should be nice, should be fun. We have people from the Katz Yeshiva High School will be sitting outside with computers, signing people up for membership if they want, getting all their details and everything like that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, well, as you know, we've tried to see whether people will go on the website themselves, but that doesn't seem to be happening. We have 9 people who are not about whether they pay or not pay, but just put in all their details. So we're going to have hopefully 3 people. We have 1 booked in already on the sit, and people can, they'll do all the details for everybody. So that will be that. Okay, Parshas Vayishlach. But before we do, I want to say a few words about the situation that we found ourselves with Syria.
It's not serious.
It's not serious, right? But I just want to say a few words about that. I don't know if anybody have seen. I watched a couple of shiurim. Reb, his name's just gone out of my head now. Reb Daniel Gladstein gave a shiur, and a couple of others, quoting a couple of sources. One is a Zohar, which I do not have a Zohar. Apparently, in the Zohar, one of the not so well-known parts of the Zohar, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai says, When Damascus falls, you should get your shoes on, ready to greet Moshiach. And a lot of people were very excited this week because presumably, I mean, again, if you look throughout history since the Second World War, you could argue Damascus has fallen 2 or 3 times. I mean, that depends on how you view it. So you have to be very careful with these things. But certainly, it's certainly a time you can say Damascus has fallen, so maybe that's something that we can do. And another thing, which you may not have had the other times, is Rabbi Gladstein quoted a Medrash Rabbah, which I tried to look up, but his reference wasn't in my Medrash Rabbah. He's had Perek Chof Ois Daled. Mine only goes up to Ches, so I'm not sure if my Medrash has different reference numbers, but anyway, where it talks about that in the times of Moshiach, Yerushalayim will stretch into Damascus, which he quoted 2 or 3 opinions, which mean either it means the authority, that, Israel will have some sort of authority. We saw this week, right? Israel, in my opinion, quite rightly, was taking preemptive strikes to get rid of the arsenal of weapons and all this sort of stuff, whatever. So, so people quite rightly are getting excited. I think, as I've said right from the start of October 7th, to me, this is definitely the final push. How long it takes, I don't know. But you see many things right from the October the 7th itself. Oh, October 7th, it reminds me. So I was speaking today, sorry to go off topic for a minute. I was speaking today to the organizers of the Nova Festival Museum that's coming to Miami. Museum is the wrong word. What's it called? Exposition. That's in North Miami Beach. Now you have to pay, it's $18 and you have to book a time. So I asked about groups. So if we book 20 people, if we pay $18 a person, we can get our own time and go around the museum ourselves. If we pay $54 a person, we can not only get the museum, but we can get a survivor to come and talk. So if people want to get together,
16 people.
Why?
Because you have 2.
Oh, okay, all right. But the programs are only like during the day, so we have to pick a time. If we won't, we'll see if people want to go.
Get a bus too to go down there.
None of that makes an expense. But you can...
Yeah, listen, it's North Miami Beach. It's not far. It's okay. It's not near. It's a bit further than Hollywood, but it's not like yeah.
10 minutes.
It's not like you're schlepping to downtown Miami or anything, which can sometimes take an hour and a half. And especially if you go midday or around that time, after the rush hour has finished and before the rush hour starts, we should be okay. But yeah, trying to get a bus, you can feel free to organize one if you so wish. Listen, if people want to give rides to people, and so on, you want to give somebody, a car share, that might be a good idea too. They do recommend the museum is not for people under 16, and it comes with a warning for those people who are squeamish, that there are very, very emotive things, sounds, and so on. So, before you decide to go, check into it, because it can be very harrowing. I mean, obviously it was a harrowing day, but that doesn't mean you have to necessarily decide that you want to go see it. So that's obviously something I just wanted to say. We can sort out. Okay. So that's about Syria. But one thing I do want to bring out is the speed of it. Right? I mean, this was like, and you could talk about Russia falling and all this sort of stuff. Very nice. That you can listen to on your political shows that can tell you the reasons of what's going to happen and what they predict. But I look at it and I see the speed, and it's something that reminds me, we talk about Teshuas Hashem keherefayim, right? The Yeshua of Hashem is so quick. We talk about psukim that say, Hashem says, Ani Hashem be'ito achishena. In the right time that Moshiach is supposed to come, I will hasten it. Now, all these things are all part of, no question, the Mashiach era. So you see how quickly things can change, right? We sat here 2 weeks ago, you'd have said Syria, Assad would have gone, nobody would have even entertained such a thing. All of a sudden from nowhere, and not only from nowhere, there seems to have been very little resistance. Right, the guy just basically stormed right through. It's a little bit like, I wasn't around then, obviously, but Russia. In the Russian Revolution, Lenin, there was just a handful of, okay, not just a handful of people, but compared to the Russian...
It took years.
What took years?
The Russian Revolution.
Right, but the initial push...
1920s, they were still fighting.
Okay.
Respect was better. 1958, 59, Cuba.
Right.
Nobody predicted that Castro had the strength.
Right.
And on January 1st, if I remember correctly, because I was around at that time, Batista packed up his gold and he left.
Right.
And it's been,
That's going to fit into what we want to talk about in the parsha a little bit.
Very
Right.
quickly and very unexpected.
But you see that when Hashem wants something to happen, it will happen. No question, no matter what you think, no matter who is trying to go against it, and we'll get to that a little bit in the parsha. So, I want to say a couple of short little ideas on the parsha, and then we'll get into some of the stuff that that we've been discussing over the last few weeks with the anti-Semitism and how we look at that. So, where do you think the earliest reference that I know of, or whatever, to a hunting falcon can be found in the literary works of the expounders of the Chumash? Where do you think a hunting falcon would come into the parasha this week?
Wings of eagles.
Huh?
Wings of eagles.
Okay, but right, but where specifically a hunting falcon? No? Okay, so the Rabbeinu Bechaya this week. There is a question which a lot of commentators ask, is Yaakov Avinu this week sends presents to Esav. What does he send him? He sends him goats and sheep. At the end of the day, Esav was a hunter, okay? So why didn't he send him hunting animals, hounds, something that he could do with, right? Why send him, Esav is this big hunter, right? Yaakov himself says, we can't go together, I've got too much sheep. Why is he sending? Esav's a running around man, right? He's here today, gone tomorrow, right? He's going around shooting. He hasn't got time to start with all this sheep and animals. That's not him, right? He's a quick guy, shoot, a kill. I haven't got time to stop being, I'm not going to be out in the field shepherding, right? That's not for me, right? Run around, get up to mischief. So that's the question. Why didn't he send him hunting animals and that sort of thing? So the Rabbeinu Bechaya says he did send him something. What does he mean? So the pasuk. Oh, I didn't bring a chumash. Of all the things I have here, I didn't bring a chumash. So the pasuk says, "Vayikach min haba b'yado mincha le'esav achiv." He took min haba b'yado, from what came to his hand, a present for Esav. So the rabbis explain it means some things that he had got, he had acquired, min haba b'yado, things he had bought. But says Rabbeinu Bechaya, and he writes this in English. I mean, he spells it in Hebrew letters, but he uses the English word. Min haba b'yado, thank you. He says like this, V'yesh pirish min haba b'yado, oaf, it's a bird, hanikra falcon, which is called a falcon. Ki mipneshu Esav ish sayed, Esav was a hunter. He bought him a bird that would go and hunt, because I googled it, and hunting falcons are capable of capturing small animals, right? Little foxes and things like that. They can go grab these animals and bring it back to the master. So what does it mean? So how do you get these falcons to come back to you, right? You may have done it at various fairs around the world, right? You put on this glove and you stand there all afraid like, and the falcon comes back to you and sits on your arm. Min haba b'yado, something that comes to your hand. What comes to your hand? The bird, you call it. Come, bring the stuff. And it comes. Ooh, no sound. So somebody has just sent a text message, there's no sound. Let's see, why would there be no sound? Let's see, no, that does appear, there's nothing on here that would suggest there's no sound. Maybe it's a problem with her device, I don't know. Okay, right, so, min haba b'yado, because the bird comes back to your hand when you call it. So that's how he explains his pasuk. He sent him something that will come back to your hand, i.e., a hunting falcon, because hunting falcons, that's a proper present for Esav. Oh, great. You're sending me something I can use, something that's going to be useful for me, something that can go out and get me animals. So I wanted to say that because how many times do you think falcons get brought up in the Mefarshim, the explainers of the Torah and so on. So I wanted to bring out this idea of falcon. The next idea, so remember, I got in trouble because we don't go through the parsha and explain it, what's going on for people who are not so familiar with the parsha. So this week's parsha starts off with Yaakov left Lavan last week after 20 years in Lavan's house, and he's making his way back from Haran. Let's say that is somewhere in Iraq, Iran, somewhere around that area, and he's going back to Israel, to Hebron, to his parents. And on the way, he sees that Esav is coming, which is a huge problem because Esav hates him. Esav wants to kill him because he stole the blessings. And Yaakov gets very nervous and very worried. We'll talk about why did he get nervous, what was all that about. And he decides to do three things. He sends a present to try and appease Esav, to try and make him feel good about himself. He splits, he prepares for war, and he davens to Hashem. And in the end, as my wife always tells me off for using expressions that nobody knows, have you heard of the expression? It turned out to be a damp squib. No, you know that expression? Okay, so he got so worried, he got so nervous, and it all went off without a hitch. He came, he hugged him, he kissed him, everything's fine. No issues, that's it. And everything went off without a glitch, and so on. So he was so worried, and Baruch Hashem, everything passed off peacefully. Then he goes to the city of Shechem, which apparently, according to most opinion, is the same Shechem that we have today. Apparently, not all the cities that we know of in Tanakh are the same cities that we have today, but Shechem, apparently, it's the same place. And his daughter Dinah gets raped. In case anybody's wondering, because we normally have this available for kids, today I put on YouTube that this shir is not made for kids. So therefore, because we're going to talk about some adult content, as they call it. So don't worry, this YouTube video is being marked not for kids. So we can talk about these things, right? So Dinah was raped by Shechem, and then Shechem had the audacity, after he captured her and raped her, to come and ask for her hand in marriage. Now, why didn't he do that before? If he wanted to marry her, that would have made it a lot easier for him. Not saying they would have given him to her, of course, but, it would have taken away this whole... But anyway, that's just the way it was. And the brothers, Shimon and Levi, they came up with a plan, a cunning plan, which was to get the Shechemites to do a bris milah, to circumcise themselves, and then they would be weak from the surgery, right? They were grown men, so it wasn't a simple thing. And then they would be weak, they would be able to come, they'd be able to kill them. Now, I did try and look to find if anybody speaks about how big was this city, right? How many people are we talking about, right? Are we talking about hundreds? Are we talking about thousands? I don't know. I can't find it. If anybody knows of anything that knows about, if anybody speaks about how many people were in Shechem, that would be, I would love to know. But I couldn't find anything. So they wiped out, these two brothers, Shimon and Levi, wiped out the whole city of Shechem. Killed all the men. They took back their daughter Dinah. However, Dinah had already been impregnated. And she later gave birth to a daughter called Osnas, who was then the wife of Yosef HaTzadik down in Egypt, which we're going to learn about in a couple of weeks' time. Then, after that, now this is fascinating, because Yaakov comes back eventually to, then Rachel has another child, Binyamin. She dies in childbirth. She gets buried on the way. Then Yaakov finally goes back to his father, Yitzchak. And then we learn about the passing of Yitzchak, even though that didn't happen for another 22 years. But the Torah records it now. And then we finish off with the descendants of Esav. All the descendants of Esav are mentioned in this week's Parsha. And there's many reasons for that, why all of a sudden they're mentioned. And we'll get to a couple of them. So that is basically the Parsha. This week's Parsha is one of the longest Parshas in the Torah. It is the fourth longest Parsha in the Torah. So it was very long. There's a lot in it, and there's a lot to discuss. One of the things I did not say, because I want to discuss it in a little bit more detail, is the meeting and the fighting of Yaakov with the angel. So let's look at how it's mentioned in the Torah. So Yaakov is frightened, and he splits up his camp, davens to Hashem, and then he camps out in the night, and all of a sudden he tries to sneakily move his family over the brook, over the river in the dark of night, and then he gets stuck on the other side of the river. He's moving everybody across, he goes back, and all of a sudden, Vayivoser, right? Vayivoser Yaakov levado. So he'd passed everybody over, and now he was stuck himself on this side of the river. Vayeovek ish imo, and a man literally wrestled with him, avak, the dust together because of the fighting. A man wrestled with him, ad alos hashach, until the morning. Vayarki lo yochol lo, and this man saw he couldn't defeat Yaakov. Vayiga bekaf Yerecho, so he touched his thighs. Vateka kaf Yaakov, he dislocated Yaakov's thigh, or his hip, probably. Beheavko ima, when they were wrestling. Vayoma shalcheni, send me away, ki ola hashacha, because it's morning. Vayoma la shalechu chol ki b'maktoni. Oh no, you may have fought me, but I want you to give me a bracha. Vayoma lav mashmecha vayoma Yaakov. My name is Yaakov, referring to deceit, because I deceived my brother, or because I was holding onto his heel. Vayoma la Yaakov v'amshevcha ki im Yisrael. Waki sorisa im Elohim v'manoshim v'atuchel. Because you fought with God, with angels, and with men, and you won. So all the commentators explain that this Ish was none other than an angel, the angel of Esav. Esav's angel, also known as the Satan. We talk about the Satan, the Yetzer Hara. It's all together, right? You may have heard in Kabbalistic circles the Malach Matat, as it's called, Mantes, the guy who tries to bring down all these negative energy and lack of spirituality and the tumah. That's all him. And he was fighting with Yaakov. So we have the struggle, the eternal struggle between Yaakov and Esav, the forces of good against the forces of evil. And all of a sudden, Noga b'kaf Yerecho, he touches Yaakov, he dislocates Yaakov's hip. So first thing to know is this a real fight? Okay? Now, I've never met any angels. Right? I think I've met Eliyahu Navi. I tell people the story on Rosh Hashanah once, hiding in the bushes, who told me how to get across somewhere when I was exhausted and didn't want to have to walk 3 miles to blow shofar all the way up Vizcaya and back down the country club. So I said, I'm going to go. And Eliyahu Navi, there was a guy just standing in the bushes, hiding in the bushes, weird fellow. And I asked him, how can I get across from, and he showed me where to go, do this, do that, I get across. So I think I met Eliyahu Navi. Okay. But I've never really spoken to any angel. He never spoke to me. He just gesticulated, showed me a few things. Anyway, so a lot of people claim they've met Eliyahu Navi, a lot of stories we know. Okay. But I've certainly never had any fights with any angels. So was this okay. I think we're back. Yeah, it looks like we're back now. Okay. I hope everybody can hear me. Oh, no. Now we're looking at Gary's feet. Now we're back to my face. Okay, so now it's working again. Yes, I have to find a way. I have to put it on. I forgot to put it on Do Not Disturb. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see me. It's now working up there. I should never have said we were a modern shul with all the technology, and now we have all these technology problems, right? I should have kept my mouth shut. Anyway, so where was I? So was it a physical fight? If I fight with you, it's physical, right? If somebody injures somebody, it's physical, right? But when you're fighting an angel, was it a physical fight? Was it not a physical fight? Was the angel physically hurting him? Did he physically dislocate it? Was it what on earth was it? So the Rambam, Maimonides, in his Guide to the Perplexed, is very against, he's more likes to go through things in a more of a rational way, right? And he says all these discussions with angels, there are no angels walking around human form, except Eliyahu Navi. That's not me saying that, that's what they say, because the Gemara talks about Eliyahu Navi comes and talks to people. So Eliyahu Navi is a human that can be in an angel form. Exactly what that means, I'm not quite sure. But he said there are no angels walking around our world. And all these discussions of people meeting angels, such as Avram and the Malachim, such as Lot, when he met those 3 people knocking on the door, banging, and all that sort of stuff. He says, and the talking of the goat, not the goat, the donkey, Bilam and the donkey, right? All of that is not real. It never really happened that the donkey spoke. It was all a vision. And he says the same is with this week. And I'll read it out to you. This is Guide to the Perplexed. Part 2, chapter XLII. What's that? Who knows Roman numerals? I have an old Guide to the Perplexed, so I'm using Roman numerals.
62.
Okay, chapter 62. Part 2, chapter 62. Thank you. Let's read this out. Right. I pray thee, pass thy servant. Okay. Note this well, for this is one of the greatest mysteries of the Torah. The same I hold is the case when it is said in reference to Jacob, and a man wrestled with him, right? What we said, took place in a prophetic vision, since it is expressly stated in the end that it was an angel. The circumstances are here exactly the same as those in the vision of Abraham, where the general statement, and the Lord appeared to him, is followed by a detailed description. Similarly, the account of the vision of Jacob begins and the angels of God met him, and follows a detailed description how it came to pass. And they met him, namely Jacob, sent messengers, and having prepared and done certain things, he was left alone, and a man wrestled with him. By the term man, one of the angels of God is mentioned in the phrase, and angels of God met him. Wrestling and speaking was entirely a prophetic vision. That means there was no physical fight. If you were standing there watching Yaakov, you would have presumably seen him in some sort of a trance, I'm guessing, right? Daydreaming, maybe he was asleep, I don't know. But you would not have seen anybody fighting with Yaakov. You wouldn't have even seen Yaakov making movements as if he was fighting, even if you couldn't see the angel, because there wasn't anything physical. It all took place in a vision. This is what happened to Bilam on the way, speaking to the donkey, also took place in a prophetic vision. Since further on in the same account, an angel of God is introduced as speaking to Bilam. So now we have a problem. Not a problem, now we have to discuss. Okay, so this was a vision, okay? So this was a vision of Yaakov. He got stuck on the other side of the brook, of the river, and now he gets this vision of meeting the angel of Esav, and they're fighting over who has control over the world, who should be the one. So now the question is, if meeting of the angel was not a physical meeting, it wasn't a physical fight, okay, is this dislocation of Yaakov's hip, is that a physical dislocation, i.e. he physically couldn't move, or is it also a prophetic vision? The biggest proof to say it was a physical deficit problem is the Torah itself. It's very clear. The Torah says, "Vayishlach lo Hashemes ka'asher obaras Penuel." The sun shone for him as he was passing through the city of Penuel. V'hu tzolea al yorecho, which literally translates as he was limping. So what is it translated here? Yeah, he was limping. I'm sure it will translate. That's what it means. He was limping. Yeah, the sun rose for him as he passed Penuel. He was limping on his hip. So the Torah seems to imply quite clearly that there was a physical defect in Yaakov Avinu because of this spiritual vision fight that he had. Now we're getting into Matrix style, right? I saw a list they put out of the top 20 films, and the only one I'd seen was The Matrix, and that drove me crazy. I didn't understand what was going on. But anyway, so this is like Matrix style stuff, right? What goes on in the Matrix can come out, I don't know. So he had this prophetic vision that he fought with the angel, and he somehow now had a physical dislocation of his hip, because that seems to be that it was a physical dislocation, because the Torah says v'hu tzolea al yorecho. Does that not seem right? Right, so that means he had a physical defect based on something that happened in a prophetic vision, okay? So don't think that, if you have visions, it can't affect you in the physical world, right? It can. The same as Bilam, he had a physical vision and he got blind, right? Because he was blinded. Do not imagine that the angel is seen or his word is heard, other than in a prophetic vision or a prophetic dream. Right? So clearly, it didn't take place physically, but yet, according to the Torah, it seems that he was still physically limping. However, there is many allegorical interpretations of what this means, that the angel Noga B'kaf Yerech Yaakov B'he'ovko Imo. So Rabbeinu B'chaye says, and this is one of the reasons why we put this as not for children, says that we know when somebody is born, what's the term for having children? Yotzei Yerecho, what comes out of your thighs, right? It's very crude, but that's how the Torah refers to Milavad Yotzei Yerecho, the coming out of the thighs, which refers not just to a woman having children, but it's also an expression of a man's children, also called Yotzei Yerecho, because the thighs and the hips are very integral to the action of having children. So because now that we have that metaphor, so Rabbeinu B'chai says, why did he damage him on his thighs? He said because he was looking for some problem in Yaakov. What was an Aveira Yaakov had? And the only thing he could find was that he'd married two sisters. Here, let's read it inside. He wasn't able to defeat Yaakov in any manner. Yaakov was perfect. He was amazing. He had no sin that the angel could beat him with. Rak mitzad avon shtei achoyos shenasa b'chayein, that he married two sisters, which once the Torah has been given is forbidden when the sisters are alive. Once one sister dies, then you can marry the other sister. But whilst both sisters are alive, or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sisters, whatever, in the times we can marry multiple women at once, you're not allowed to marry two sisters whilst they're both alive, even if you divorce one, so you're only marrying one at a time, you still can't do that. He hit him to give him punishment in the place of the chet, because as we said, the hips is synonymous with the act of intercourse, and that's why he hit him in the hips. Others say it refers to the fact that he damaged future generations of Jews, right? He tried to damage Yaakov's descendants. He tried to say, okay, Yaakov, you're perfect, you're pure, but I want to do something that is going to damage your children, and there'll be problems further down the line. I can't beat you now, but further down the line, I'll get you in future generations. In fact, here, and obviously Rabbeinu Bechaya lived in the 13th century, 14th century, well before the Holocaust. So just listen to this. So he says, why did he, in Yagam came Remez Ladoros, this hitting of the dislocating of Yaakov's hip is trying to show you for future generations, because we said everything that happens in Parshas is like a microcosm of what's going to happen later. Right? That Esav is going to be so strong in times come by that he'll be able to dislocate Yaakov, completely separate them. The head from the feet, the kedusha from the legs, the earthliness, right? You just walk on the ground, it's earthliness, it's this world. The head is the next world, right? That's why Esav's head is buried in Ma'aras HaMachpelah, because he still had some kedusha. The rest of his body is not so good. So therefore, that's not buried in Ma'aras HaMachpelah. But his head was kedusha, his father was Yitzchak and Rivka, he had some kedusha, so his head is buried in Ma'aras HaMachpelah. So he tried to dislocate Yaakov, separate your top half of your body from your bottom half of your body. Shekain Dosh Rabbeinu Zal. Right, and he said, Remez Ladorsha, Yavod Dorsha Yiskaber Esav Alein, that Esav will be so strong against the Jewish people, that they would almost be completely wiped out. So don't forget, Rabbeinu Bechaya lived in the 13th, 14th century. So when does he say this took place? He said this took place while he said Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba v'Chaveirov. This is the time of the Hadrianic persecutions, at the time of Bar Kokhba, where almost Yiddishkeit was wiped out. I think now, since the Holocaust, we can certainly say that the Holocaust era was something that certainly fits this bill, that Esav almost was successful in completely wiping out Yaakov. So that's what he did. Noga b'kaf Yerecho. He couldn't get Yaakov, but Yotze Yerecho, his future generations, which is symbolized by his hip, he pushed something into him, and that's why they were able to be successful. I have a pshat that I want to run by you all, okay? This is my own pshat. I've not seen it anywhere, so try this one on for size, okay? So, we talk about Yotze Yerecho, the thighs, the hips, is synonymous with the act of intercourse, which is synonymous with children and all that sort of stuff. So therefore, it could also be synonymous with arayos, immorality, okay? And we know that Esav, his way of getting the Jewish people over the millennium was with arayos, with immorality, okay? That's why they say Dina. What's after Esav and Yaakov parted way? What's the next thing that happened? Immorality. Oh, okay, Dina's not to blame. That's not what we're saying. But it's the idea of Esav was like, I need to get Yaakov. How do I get him? Immorality. His daughter was captured. Bilam tried to get the Jews, as we know. He couldn't. So what did he do? What was Bilam? What's his last resort? Bring out the girls. Let's do all that stuff with Baal Pa'or. So Esav, his modus apparatus to get the Jews, that's how his last resort, he tries everything, is through immorality. Because we know, the Apostle says, Hashem is Sona Ezima, Hashem hates immorality. That's why the Dar HaMabul, there was all this immorality, there was all this stuff, and Hashem said, right, can't be. I got to destroy the world. So maybe that's this idea. Naga b'kaf Yerecho. He injected. He put his fingerprints in this idea that he put his tumor. He put his negative energy into Klal Yisrael, that they would be susceptible to immorality, that they would have a weakness through the thighs, that we said the thighs is a metaphor for intercourse and so on, that maybe Naga B'Kafi Yirecha, I'm going to get you. I'm going to put in a little bit of Zuhamah. The Gemara talks about when the Nachash pit Chava and they ate, he imparted some Zuhamah, some some negative stuff that allows people to do Averos, exactly how these things materialize. Ruach Ra, negative energy, that's one of the reasons why we wash Negelwasser every morning, right? We try and get rid of this Ruach Ra. And it's interesting. I always say I can understand Ruach Ra, bad energy, like radiation, okay? Radiation you can't see, you can't necessarily feel it, but it does detrimental effects. And we had somebody who came to Shul this Shabbos, who just walked 3 miles to Shul, just came to our community, Baruch Hashem. His name is Abi, and he told me he is a survivor of Chernobyl. And he's had 24 surgeries because he was in the Ukrainian army, and he was telling me the whole story Sunday morning after Shachris, all that he's been through in Siberia, and the terrible things he's went through in his life. And he said he was stationed near Chernobyl. He said most of his unit were killed with the radiation and stuff. He's had terrible radiation poisoning, and he was telling me some of the effects and so on. So not that I wanted to upset anybody, but just you see this idea that, even though you can't see something, you can't feel this radiation necessarily, but it can cause terrible effects. It's on a person. It's there. So that's how I understand all this tumor, this negative energy, this zuhama, this little bit of stuff that they imprint. You can't feel it. You can't see it, but it's there, and it makes terrible outcomes if it is allowed to, if it's allowed, you can't, with the naked eye, certainly see radiation and so on. And therefore, that's what I think the Malach of Esav did. He noga b'kaf yirecha. He put in his little bit of poison into this idea of morality, into Yaakov's hips, into his thighs. That's how I'm going to get you. That's how I'm going to get the Jewish people throughout history. And you look throughout history, straight away Dinah. And then again, that's why Yosef was tested. What was he tested with? Immorality, exactly. That was immorality. He stood up through the test, and that's why he was zocher to all the amazing things. And throughout history, right, that's one of the cardinal sins. Avodah zarah, gil arayis, shvichas damim. In fact, who is it? I can't remember who it is. We talk about serving the egel, right, the golden calf. And it says by the egel, the Shlach HaKadosh says, right, that the egel letters is ayin, Gimel Lamed, Egel. So he said, well, it stands for, the Ayin stands for Arayas, immorality. The Gimel stands for Gezel, stealing, and the Lamed stands for Loshon Hora, the 3 sins that we have nowadays, right? Because we don't have Avodah Zarah, because that was taken away, right? So those are the 3 sins. So Arayas, right, immorality. In fact, the Rambam, based on a Gemara, the Rambam in Hisurei Bia talks about, based on the Gemara, that there is no Jewish city, there's no Jewish neighborhood that doesn't have somebody somewhere doing something that they shouldn't, right? It's something that is Naga b'kaf yirecha. He imprinted he got him. He was like, how can I get you? I can't do anything, but I'm going to do something for future generations. I'm going to upset your DNA. I'm going to put it into the Jewish DNA that they are susceptible to episodes of arayas, immorality, and that's how the Jews have been gotten throughout the years. Look at Pilegesh Begivo, right? Where Binyamin, the civil war, with the story of this woman who was raped again and again and again, and the Jews went to war against Shevet Binyamin, nearly wiped them all out, right? A lot of these things all base themselves on immorality, and that's perhaps this idea. Noga b'kaf yirecho. He imprinted, he dislocated the metaphor of the thighs, and that's why he got him in a little bit. I have a question I want to raise. Again, if anybody has an answer, please let me know. So Yaakov was petrified of Esav in this week's Parshas, sent him gifts, all this sort of stuff, right? He was petrified of him. He davened, and Baruch Hashem, everything was fine. But yet, 22 years later, Yitzchak dies. And what does it say? Vayikbu oso, Esav and Yaakov Bonov. That who buried him? Esav and Yaakov. So they were together. Now, why is that even more surprising? Because what was the original plan that Esav had to kill Yaakov? Esav said, Yikruvu Yemei Evel Avi. Let's wait till the time of mourning for my father. V'hargo es Yaakov Achin, I'll kill Yaakov, my father. So the original plan that Esav had was to kill Yaakov when? When Yitzchak had died. So when should Yaakov have been really frightened? When should he have been really scared to meet Esav? When his father died at the Levaya. Because that's when Esav said, I'm going to kill him. And yet, the Torah just glosses over it. Vayikparu also Esav and Yaakov Bonov. They buried them together as if, hello. Very strange. This week, he's petrified. But yet, 23 years later, maybe they were old men, so he wasn't scared of him, I don't know. But 23 years later, when Yitzchak had died and Rivka's already dead, because she died in this week's Parsha too, on the way home, so both his parents had died, so he should have been really worried about Esav now. But yet he wasn't. All of a sudden, they just bury. Not a peep, not a frightened nothing. So, I was thinking, and I wrote about this in my newsletter article, and we only have a few minutes left, so I want to say, this could talk about the power of family reunification. As a rabbi, I hear stories, including last week, a story of families who unfortunately have people who don't speak to each other, right? Maybe people are listening, maybe people are here. Families have issues. And for whatever reason, some people don't speak to each other 20 years, 30 years, right? And it gets very weird at Levayas as a rabbi when people who have not seen each other 20 years to come. It's sometimes, they say, Rabbi, tell my brother, and then they do, it's just, and you're like, what? Wait, we're not talking to them, so I won't, I'm going to stand at the back. You see, I shouldn't laugh because it's very sad. But sometimes, you come across all sorts of difficult family dynamics, okay? And I think this week's Parsha is a lesson, and you'll see more about it in what I wrote in my newsletter article, in how to repair family feuds. Look, this week, Yaakov and Esav hated each other, so much so that this is the stereotypical anti-Semitism. Esav owns Yaakov, Esav hates Yaakov, he wants to kill him, he did everything to kill him, all that sort of stuff. He said, I'm going to get him. And look, they met, they kissed, even if you're going to say, like some Mepharshim say, the kiss was not a real kiss, it was whatever, but right, the kiss of death, but yet, you see, they seem to have made up in some capacity, so much so that Esav was like, you know what? I'll come with you. Let's go together. Which according to some Mepharshim say, Esav finally realized his true mission in life. The mission that Yitzchak wanted to do with the brachos, that Esav would be the enforcer of Judaism, Yaakov would sit and study Yiddishkeit, and Esav would be the policeman doing all the wars. Thank you. But then Esav couldn't cope with that, and he wanted everything for himself, and that's why Rivka realized, no, we have to be separate. But here, Esav did some sort of shuv, let's be a partnership together. So much so that I saw in the Pirkei to Rebbe Lezer, which is the, I don't know if you could, I suppose you can call it the original Kabbalah Sefer before the Zohar, whatever. And I find it, I've tried looking at pieces of Zohar, it's very, very difficult Aramaic and so on and so forth. But this is written in Hebrew, and this is, it's not as heavy in many aspects, and so on and so forth. And here it talks about how Yaakov and Esav wanted to inherit their father, and they had this whole deal, who will inherit this, and Yaakov said, I'll inherit Israel. That's why Esav went away to Edom. He said, you'll take Eretz Yisrael, I'll take Edom. They all left. So it was all Shalom al Yisrael. They were all pieced together. You go through, right? We don't have much time left, but they were peaceful together, and they wanted to have Shalom. And I'm thinking, if Yaakov and Esav, the stereotypical hatred, are able to reconcile and reconnect and have some sort of problem. Now, it doesn't mean they lived together, and it doesn't mean they spoke every day, because they went to a different place. And I quoted a few weeks ago by Lot and Avram, and I said the same about opening the shul. Lot was the nephew of Avram. They were nephew and uncle and nephew. Avram brings in Lot and says to him, let's not fight. Right? Let's not have any fighting. So what do you expect the next thing? Avram, the pillar of chesed, who brings everybody into his house, who loves everybody. What do you expect Avram to say when he says, let's not fight? Let's be together. Let's love each other. Let's come together. No, he doesn't say that. He says we have to separate. Im hasamol ve'min. If you go left, I'll go right. If you go right, I'll go left. He pored no merla. We have to separate. Wait a minute. You just said, Al not let's not fight. Let's be friends. Ki achim anachnu. We're brothers. We're cousins. Why are we fighting? But sometimes you still need to have separation, right? So sometimes to make shalom, you have to separate. So I'm not saying you have to be loving and you have to be best of friends with families and stuff. Sometimes you have to separate and live in different places and not speak every day. I get that, as we see from here. But the idea of having discord in a family, if Yaakov and Esav can reconcile and reconnect through all of this, through all of the fact he wanted to kill him and he sent his angels and all that stuff, when it came to the Levaya, certainly of the father, when he said I was going to kill him at the Levaya, when it came then, they were able to have shalom. So surely even us, right? Surely family fights nowadays can't be worse than Yaakov and Esav. Can't be as bad as Yaakov and Esav. And I think we have to take, again, it may not just be family, it may be friends that some people haven't spoken to for many, many years, right? We all have people that we may have fallen out with over the years. But if Yaakov and Esav can make up, and if we look at the Pasha, what did Yaakov do? He davened, of course, but he reached out. He made the first move. He sent him a present, sent him gifts. Okay, maybe not send everybody a hunting falcon and so on and so forth. I have no idea if these things are expensive. Going around sending hunting falcons and so on to people. But he made the first step. Not only did he do that, right? He also humbled himself. He kept saying, you're my master. He was able to say, you know what, it doesn't bother me so much if you take the higher road. Now, according to many opinions, he was punished for that, and that's why we have all these issues, because you should never have said, my master Esav. Okay, but just looking at it from a superficial way, he went out of his way to appease his brother. He took the high road, and he went out of his way to try and to make a difference, and it worked, because he won over Esav. He won him over, and it didn't just last for a few minutes or a few hours while they were together, or a few days, however long it was. Even 22 years later at the funeral. Now again, they may have been living together according to the Pirkei Rav Lezer. They both lived together with Yitzchak together, because only after Yitzchak died does it say Esav went away. So they lived together in harmony. They were able to reconnect. So I urge people to take that lesson to heart, to see, to think, especially when it comes to family, right? There's a pasuk that you shouldn't turn away from family, and you should help family first, and so on and so forth. And nobody riles people up like one's own family, right? It's all interesting, right? You could have two people in the same issue, but if one's your family, like, oh, why you got this issue? Oh, you should do better with yourself, right? I've heard that from you. Oh, I'm not giving money to my family. Oh, they should get a job. You should this. Somebody else, a stranger. Oh, come, yes, let me do something to help you, which is something as well that is not really the Torah way. So that's what I want to finish off on a positive note, that we should take that message to heart. We're coming up to Hanukkah. 2 weeks tonight is the first night of Hanukkah. Next week we'll dedicate our Shia to Hanukkah, Miss Hashem. Maybe we can have some evening Mincha Maariv Minyanim on Hanukkah, so we can light the menorah and celebrate the Nes of Hanukkah as well, where people came together, Matisyo and his brothers. They said, you know what? We have to come together, even though some people were misyavnin, some people were fallen prey to the Greek culture and gave up their Yiddishkeit, certainly outwardly. They brought everybody together. And I'll just finish off with this, and maybe we'll go into more detail next week. If you look in the Hanukkah story, they put pigs. They offered pigs in the Beis HaMikdash, and they put idols in the Beis HaMikdash, right? The Gemara talks about it, right? Zeus, whatever it was. For 3 years, I think it was. And Hashem never destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. You would have thought Hashem destroyed the Beis HaMikdash twice. This is the time to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. As Avodah Zarah, the worshipping of Zeus, I think it was, something, Zeus or whatever, and pigs, offering pigs. You're telling me Hashem's not going to destroy the Beis HaMikdash? No, he didn't. When did he destroy the Beis HaMikdash? When there was sinas chinam, right? When there was all of a sudden hatred and disharmony, no. Then Hashem says, sorry, no harmony, goodbye, I'm gone. Beis HaMikdash is destroyed. It doesn't seem to add up. If you take, well, they were still offering korbanos, they were still keeping Torah mitzvahs at the end of the second Beis HaMikdash. The Mishnayos, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, all these people around at the end of the second Beis HaMikdash, giants of the Torah that we have today. So there was Torah like, but yet there was disharmony. Hashem said, forget it. You have Zeus in the Beis HaMikdash. You have pigs. I can cope with that. I can cope with that as long as there's harmony. So let's take that message to heart. We think of Yaakov and Esav being so evil to each other, being so horrible, but if you look, they reconnected, they reconciled. And in that schos, in that merit, we talked about Syria and the coming of Mashiach. If we reach out and we try and make peace in our own families and so on and so forth, then may we see the coming of Mashiach and the utopic society which we crave. B'mheira v'yameinu, amen. Okay. And we'll say goodbye to everybody on YouTube. We have 6 people watching online now. Let's see. Are we sure we want to stop streaming? Yes.